Welcome to Le Grand Voyage with Chateau Malartic La Gravière. When you visit Bordeaux, and you must, make sure that you try the little custard tarts of the region called cannelle. They look a bit like a little chef's hat. They're caramelised and crusty on the outside, soft and deliciously eggy on the inside. There's a reason for that egg yolk character, and the reason is winemaking. But first, we need to go back a few steps. I'm very lucky. I've had a little experience of winemaking in a Bordeaux chateau. It's a time of constant activity. Pickers pass up and down rows of vines, clipping off bunches of grapes by hand and filling modest-sized bins so that the grapes on top aren't so heavy that they crush the grapes below. These come back to the winery, and there's a series of beauty parades. Whole bunches might be discarded, or bits lopped off if they're not up to scratch. Then the grapes are stripped from their stems and sorted individually. I've spent time standing at the sorting tables. You pick out any rogue leaves, underripe grapes, overripe grapes, not very pretty grapes. Some wineries even invest in special equipment to sort grapes with special optical sorters, more accurate apparently than the human eye. For red wines, the grapes are gently crushed. In fairness, it's a firm hug more than a crush, just enough to split the skin. And the grapes ferment. Winemakers use all sorts of materials and vessels depending on taste. There are big wooden vats, smaller wooden barrels, big steel tanks, concrete tanks, even a mix. The wine bubbles away for a week or more. Every so often the winemaker will drain wine out of the bottom and pour it back over the top, mixing the cap of skins and pips back in, drawing out colour and flavour. The wines are eventually run off and put in barrels, sometimes with some of the press wine. That's the inky, dark wine that comes from pressing the cap of skins and pips left in the tank. Wines might spend a couple of years in barrels. In smart estates, some more or all will be new oak. A huge expense, but worth it for the flavour and the complexity and the texture that new oak can bring. It's most common to use a mix of brand new and second and third use barrels. And then those cannelle. Remember, the little cakes? Well, these are a byproduct of a stage in winemaking. The wine in the barrel can be a little cloudy, not quite sparkling bright. To keep it stable and clear in the bottle, you need to fine it. In Bordeaux, that's traditionally done by whisking up a lot, and I mean a lot, of egg whites and pouring them into the barrel. They collect the particles, and so the wine runs off bright and can go into bottles. Of course, the question is, what do you do with all the yolks? Well, you make cannelle. Of course, we mustn't forget Bordeaux's delicious white wines. In many ways, they're made in a similar way. The grapes are sorted and checked and pass through the beauty parade. But once they're crushed, they're pressed. White grapes don't need to ferment on their skins. You just want the juice. The wines are fermented cooler too, to keep those lovely aromatic, fragrant aromas. Many winemakers like to use steel tanks to keep those aromas really fresh and bright. Some use barrels to integrate their toasty notes into the wines. And this is where the big style differences in Bordeaux's whites can come in. It's a region that makes fresh, tangy, crispy whites that have never seen a barrel, as well as mid-weight fruity styles that might have been in oak barrels for 4 or 5 months, and then rich, complex, fuller styles of white wine that have had anywhere between 9 months and maybe more than a year in barrel, eventually going into a bottle and finding their way to you. What happens next is your decision. With Bordeaux's younger, fresher, less expensive wines, they're made to be enjoyed while they still have that very bright, expressive fruit. With the richer, more complex, more intense reds and whites, the end of the winemaking process is just the start of their journey. In the right vintage, from the right estate, they might have 10, 20, maybe 50 years ahead of them, growing and evolving. While you wait, you can have a cannelé. Join us again tomorrow for more stories from Bordeaux with Le Grand Voyage.